She betrayed me. The words echoed in my mind as I stared at the damning photos. My world, built on trust and love, crumbled. "Why did you do it?" I demanded, but her excuses were empty. Our love was a lie, tainted by her deceit. This is my descent into heartbreak and revenge. Enjoy watching it. Around the time my wife engaged in infidelity, our marriage had already lasted for approximately 15 years. We initially met during our college years, eventually tying the knot and starting a family a few years later. I never suspected anything was amiss, although I understand that some individuals may find this hard to believe. From my perspective, everything seemed fine. We would wake up together in the morning, have breakfast with our children, and then proceed with our daily routines until returning home in the evening. Afterwards, we would have dinner as a family and spend quality time together. Our level of intimacy had not significantly changed. Admittedly, it may not have been as intense as when we first got married, but it was still satisfactory for a couple who had been together for such a long time. If my wife had displayed any signs of her infidelity, it would have been easier for me to comprehend the situation. However, she did not. Even after all these years, I am still unable to identify any indications. Perhaps she had mastered the art of concealing her actions from me, fooling me completely. The only reason I became aware of her affair was because of our children. They happened to witness their mother kissing her friend while I was at work one day. Given that all of our children were under the age of 10, it was incredibly challenging for them to comprehend what they had witnessed. When I returned home, they innocently inquired about the situation. It was incredibly difficult for me to maintain a facade for the sake of my children, but I managed to do so. I simply smiled at them and assured them that I would discuss the matter with their mother that night. And so I did. My wife was taken aback by my revelation. She claimed that the children had misunderstood the situation and that she was merely giving her friend from work a hug. According to her, he had dropped something off for her. It was astonishing how convincingly my wife presented her case. I almost wanted to believe her, but I knew that my children would not fabricate such a story. Furthermore, it was not easy to mistake a kiss for a hug. Nevertheless, I allowed my wife to believe that I trusted her explanation and decided to take matters into my own hands. I resorted to a traditional approach and hired a private investigator to track her activities. Considering our financial stability, I believed it was a reasonable investment to obtain concrete evidence. Within a span of 2 weeks, I acquired the proof I needed and confronted my wife. With all she did was weep incessantly, continuously lamenting about how the co-worker she was involved with was her soulmate. It was not a deliberate choice, of course. It simply unfolded and unexpectedly. In that very moment, I realized that my marriage had reached its end. There was absolutely no way I could remain in a marriage with a woman who betrayed me, accused my children of lying, and attempted to portray them as the wrongdoers. If I hadn't enlisted the services of a private investigator, she probably would have never confessed the truth to me. I had to initiate the divorce proceedings. She pleaded with me to stay, but eventually slithered away to be with her affair partner. We managed to have a civil divorce and custody agreement. The custody was divided, but as the children grew older, their desire to spend time with her diminished. Once they reached a certain age, they comprehended the actions of their mother. I never uttered a word to them about it or spoke ill of their mother, because ultimately she was still their mother. As they matured, I did my utmost to address their inquiries to the best of my ability. Eventually, my children no longer wished to spend time with their mother. She took me to court, but by that point, the children were old enough to decide whether they wanted to visit her or not. They chose not to. Consequently, the judge declared that it was beyond her control. If my children preferred to stay with me full-time and forego visiting their mother, so be it. My ex-wife was displeased with this outcome and resorted to criticizing me on social media, as is customary, but I paid no attention to it because it was beneath me. By then, my ex had remarried her affair partner and had a child with him. This likely contributed to our children's reluctance to visit her. They felt as though they were being replaced. At least, that is what I suspected until our children turned 18. My ex-wife made every effort to persuade them to come see her, but her attempts were in vain. Once they left for college, she could no longer employ legal means to compel them to visit her, even though it wouldn't have worked anyway, as the judge would not enforce it. The years went by. After my children graduated from college, got married, and started their own families, I was overjoyed to embrace the role of a grandfather for the first time. It truly is a distinct experience from being a parent and provides a wonderful opportunity to indulge them with love and affection. However, at some point, my wife ceased her efforts to connect with our children. It was only after her husband passed away that she resumed her attempts. With her late husband, she had only one child, and they had no immediate plans of having children. Therefore, her only chance of having grandchildren was through our shared offspring. Unfortunately, our children still showed no interest in establishing a relationship with her. I'm uncertain whether my ex-wife desired to boast about it on social media or genuinely craved a connection with her grandchildren. Regardless of the reason, my children were not inclined to spend time with her or allow her to interact with their own children. It was their prerogative, and she persistently tried to change their minds. She resorted to incessantly messaging them on social media and attempting to rekindle relationships. It's so. Had she left things as they were and at least offered an apology, which she never did, it might have improved her chances. However, my ex-wife was never adept at considering the long-term consequences of her actions. Consequently, she missed out on numerous precious moments with our grandkids. I myself remarried a few years ago, and my second wife has become more of a grandmother to my grandchildren than their biological grandmother ever was. In fact, they are barely aware of her existence. As a result of the revelation of her affair, my ex-wife lost many friends, and even some family members. They turned against her due to their disapproval of her treatment towards me. Despite this, we maintained an amicable relationship and occasionally reached out to one another. Although we are not as close as we once were, we still communicate a few times a year. While I am fortunate to have a fulfilling family life, I have heard that my ex-wife has become a resentful and solitary widow. Even her child from her late husband is not particularly close to her. For undisclosed reasons, they have chosen to distance themselves from my former partner. Though I remained indifferent to the specifics, I could speculate on several plausible motivations behind their actions. Were it not for my spouse's decision to stray from our marriage, she would not now be facing her later years in solitude, bereft of progeny or grandchildren with whom to share them. I harbor no sympathy for her plight, for she has brought it upon herself and must endure its consequences until her final breath. Instances of infidelity seldom reveal the enduring repercussions it imposes on the lives of those involved, even decades later. This situation exemplifies such repercussions vividly. Your erstwhile wife appeared to possess all the trappings of a fulfilling existence: a devoted partner, children, supportive relatives, and friends. Yet, she forfeited these blessings in pursuit of what she deemed her soulmate, opting for the path of least resistance, infidelity. Remarkably, she stooped so low as to castigate her own offspring branding them as deceitful. Given this behavior, it is scarcely surprising that your children have chosen to sever ties with her. The same rationale extends to their reluctance to expose their own children to her influence. While avenues for reconciliation existed, it appears that your ex-wife obstinately clung to her course of action. Continue to relish the joys of your current family life, replete with offspring and grandchildren, while your ex-spouse grapples with bitterness and resentment. Now, let us shift our focus to the second narrative. My marriage to my former spouse endured for a decade, commencing immediately after our high school graduation, a decision that elicited warnings from well-meaning advisors who deemed it premature. They advocated for patience, urging us to first complete our education, embark on careers, and then consider matrimony. Despite their counsel, my infatuation blinded me to reason. Having dated since our sophomore year, I believed I had found my eternal companion. My partner at the time appeared to share my sentiments, and thus we exchanged vows and pursued tertiary education together, taking advantage of married student housing. Amidst the bustling demands of our collegiate pursuits, I discerned a profound fortification of our marital bond during our shared academic tenure. Following our graduation, we secured accommodations and gainful employment within our respective vocations. Subsequent events unfolded auspiciously. Gradually, we embarked upon the construction of our shared future. Adversaries who once cautioned us against matrimony had recanted, sharing their support towards our union. Her familial ties seamlessly intertwined with my own, augmenting my relational landscape. Thus, with our nuptials, I acquired an expanded familial network. Approximately a year and a half prior to our impending 10th anniversary, subtle shifts in my wife's demeanor aroused my scrutiny. She evinced increased emotional distance and recoiled from my affections. Initially, I attributed these developments to my burgeoning professional commitments and attendant preoccupations. In an effort to ameliorate any perceived neglect, I endeavored to orchestrate a romantic interlude. However, my overture was met with her unexplained absence, purportedly spent in the company of a friend. Without reason to doubt her veracity, I accepted her account. As the milestone of our 10th anniversary approached, her aloofness persisted unabated, with her physical presence within our home markedly diminished. It was then that the disquieting suspicion of marital infidelity took root in my consciousness. In pursuit of confirmation, I resorted to the utilization of an Apple AirTag, a measure that I deemed regrettable but necessary. Contrary to her professed destination, she was discovered traversing a locale diametrically opposed to her stated whereabouts. Confronted with incontrovertible evidence, I discreetly observed her emergence, arm in arm, with a markedly dissimilar consort, conspicuous for his adorned countenance, a stark juxtaposition to my conventionally conservative demeanor. A recording of the encounter silently documented the unsettling revelation. Upon her return, I chose to forego verbal reproach, opting instead to elucidate my findings through the playback of the incriminating footage. Her initial incredulity soon yielded to vociferous protestation, decrying my perceived invasion of privacy and surveillance. Despite her protestations, I maintained a composed demeanor, awaiting a lull in her tirade before calmly inquiring into the motives underlying her adulterous inclinations, specifically her assertion of yearning for a partner as more dynamically spirited than myself, characterized by her as overly sedate and predictable. My wife's desire was not to work hard in order to provide a good life for us. I explained to her that my hard work allowed us to afford our comfortable house, car, and other things. However, she expressed that she wanted something more. If that's what she wanted, I was okay with it. True to her word, she wanted to separate from me as soon as possible, with me being the main financial provider. She could have taken a significant amount of money and received spousal support from me. However, her main focus seemed to be finalizing the divorce papers. She was eager to be with her beloved AP, who she considered her true soulmate. I was merely a stepping stone on her path to finding him. These were her words, not mine. If that's what she wanted, then so be it. The settlement resulted in me keeping the house, the dog, and more than half of the money in our joint account. I was surprised that all she wanted was for the car to be fully paid off and no alimony. I suppose my ex-wife wanted a complete separation from me, which is why she agreed to such a clean split. Did it hurt? Yes, it certainly did, but if that's what she wanted, then I accepted it. In fact, it was probably better for me to have a clean break from the moment our divorce was finalized. I had no reason to maintain contact with her because I saw no benefit in having her in my life. However, we did have mutual friends, and I still kept in touch with some of her family members, so I was still aware of certain aspects of her life. Within a year of the divorce, her AP, or the new love of her life, left her for someone else. This sent her into a downward spiral since she had been staying at his place. She was left with nowhere to go. My ex-wife couldn't return to her parents because they had essentially disowned her, yet they still maintain contact with me to this day. The last I heard, she was living in a small apartment with her sister and the new love of her life. She is working 2 jobs to make ends meet and is in debt. During our divorce, had she been more assertive, she would have had a larger financial cushion with alimony to rely on. While I didn't voice any complaints, a more logical approach, rather than an emotional one, would have put her in a better position. It's a bit odd that her new partner shares my name. I prefer not to dwell on it too much. Dating someone with the same name as your ex seems somewhat unconventional, similar to avoiding dating someone with a family member's name. It's a puzzling choice to me. However, there were many aspects of my ex's decisions that I couldn't comprehend and probably never will. She is part of my past, so there's no need for concern. As for my ex-wife, it has been several years since our divorce. While her life has taken a downward turn, mine has been on an upward trajectory. I remarried 3 years ago, and my current wife and I are expecting our first child. Trusting another woman was a challenge, so it took time for me to consider dating again. My current wife was understanding and patient, waiting until I was ready. Eventually, I felt prepared to enter into a new relationship, leading to a second marriage. I have achieved a new level of success. We sold the old house I shared with my ex, purchased a larger one, and even have savings. Both of us had successful careers. My wife plans to take maternity leave after the baby arrives. If my ex is aware of my new life, she has not reached out to me. I doubt she ever will, and that suits me just fine. There is no necessity for further communication. However, I sometimes ponder whether she regrets rushing into an affair and divorce to be with her current partner. It's likely that my ex regrets her decisions, but karma has a way of balancing things out. I am content with the way things have unfolded. The same sentiment is echoed at the conclusion of your post because it holds true. What goes around comes around. It may appear that the individual who wronged you is thriving without facing any repercussions for their actions. However, repercussions will catch up with them eventually. Whether it be a subtle consequence or, in the case of your former spouse, significant repercussions that have a lasting impact on their financial stability. It is commendable that she did not seek alimony or financial support from you following the divorce. Many divorced men experience this, so it is fortunate that she did not pursue it. For the sake of your financial well-being, I extend my congratulations to you, your new spouse, and your upcoming child. Your story offers hope to others that there are more opportunities for happiness after a difficult period. While it may not be simple, it is achievable. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.